Single father households. Everybody talks about single mother households, but nobody really talks about single father households. And believe me, it's not what you expect, which is what we will be covering in this video today. I'm going to be covering the statistical differences between single father households and single mother households, and I'm also going to give my opinion on why these differences exist. So we're first going to start off with an article. It's by Alicia Jane. Single father households do vastly better than single mother households. Now, this article gets many things correct, but it also gets many things incorrect, so we're just going to go right through them. Children from single mother households are 5 times more likely to commit 10 times more likely to abuse chemical substances, 14 times more likely to commit surprise butt sex. Sorry, YouTube doesn't like me to say the R word. 20 times more likely to end up in prison, 32 times more likely to run away from home, and single mother households also account for 70% of all teenage pregnancies. Single mother households also account for 70% of all child murderers and the majority of filicide cases. And in the article, it also effectively breaks down why economic differences aren't the cause for this. They take into account poverty and how much they make, and you still end up with this. Statistically speaking, single-father households do not fare worse than two-parent households. The only difference is that children are more likely to be promiscuous if there's only a father in the household instead of both a father and a mother. Other than that, single-father households fare just as good as two-parent households, meaning you only get problems with children when there's a father missing. But, again, there are a couple of things that this article got wrong. First off, I want to cover this one point which is very important. I actually made a video a long time ago, and I said this exact same thing. They are more likely to commit surprise butt sex, as it's called. The problem is, I'm sure it's actually the case, but I don't know if it's that high. I kind of doubt it, because it's worded in a weird way. If you actually look at the stat they're talking about, they say 80% of surprise butt sexers with anger problems come from fatherless homes and are 14 times the average. With anger problems. What exactly does that mean? Like, why can't we just talk about people who actually do it? Why specifically anger problems? That really rubs me the wrong way. And I can't find any statistical data without the anger issues when it comes to single mother households. It's always with anger problems. What about the people who commit surprise butt sex who aren't really angry? They just do it because they're horrible people. Like, that's something that's really annoyed me. And it's important to keep that in mind. They probably still have higher percentages, but it's most likely overinflated because of the with anger problems. It also says that the best parent doesn't always get custody, especially if he is male. So it's talking about how judges will award custody to women more than men. The problem is, the majority of cases, men don't fight for custody. Men choose not to be in the lives of their children a lot of the times. And when men fight to have custody, when men try to be in the lives of their kids, they often are successful. It's something that's commonly repeated in the red pill spaces, but it's just blatantly false when you look at the data. And I think it's a good thing. Fight to be in their lives as much as you can. But now that we covered the stats, why is this the case? Now, I think it has to do with 2 fundamental differences. 1. Mothers cannot physically overpower their children. If a 16-year-old boy wants to do something, he's going to do it, and his mom isn't going to stop him. He can physically overpower her. The person who does and can stop him, though, is the father. When the father says something, you take it very seriously. And for most kids, when a mom says no, well, it's more of a suggestion than anything. And this isn't to be disrespectful or rude to mothers out there. I'm just saying what it is from a teenager's perspective. You need that physical, strong, dominant presence to tell the kid no, and to also inspire him on what he can be or should be. He acts as an example, an ideal role model for them that the mother simply cannot do. I mean, the mother is also a role model, but she cannot fill that strong, dominant role model. It just doesn't happen. Which leads into our second part, women being forced into the leadership role. Sometimes they can be a good leader. I know of some people who say that their mothers are much more of the stable role, are stronger in terms of temperament, while the father is much more loving and empathetic. I think that can happen, but I think that's inherently due to their nature. If a woman is born more masculine, she'll naturally fit into that position much better than women who don't have that. Women who aren't born that way and trained to be that way, it ends up becoming a mess, a horrible mess. Especially if they're not trained to, or they just don't know how to, Quickie interruption, if you're enjoying this video, please do subscribe. I put so much time and effort into these videos. It would mean so much. And what you have in this instance with single mothers is they're forced into that leadership role. They're forced not only to be the nurturer, supply them with emotional stability, but also the breadwinner. And that can be very stressful. Women do not handle stress as well as men do. Their sensitivity to negative emotion is higher than men, especially in certain domains. It's not all the exact same. Men can also struggle to regulate certain emotions, especially anger. But generally, women struggle more with emotional stability. It's not the most uncommon story to hear that a child has to comfort and make their mother feel good, which is backwards. What does that do to a kid, you think? And you could argue with me and say, I'm just creating baseless gender stereotypes. There's no difference between men or women in this domain, and it could be that I'm wrong here. But look at the data. Clearly, there is a big difference between single fathers and single mothers here that causes way different outcomes with these children. And it's not money. Money alone does not cause this. And in my opinion also, generally women don't have that personality or those characteristics that make a good leader. And on top of that, they're not trained for it as much because they weren't planning to be leaders. Do you think that they preemptively decided, hey, I'm going to be a single mother? Again, I'm not trying to shit on single mothers here. They really do try their best, but they're not prepared to be the only parents in the family. They weren't raised to be leaders, and they probably weren't born with those characteristics that make naturally good leaders. And I'm not even saying that men are all naturally born to be great leaders or something like that. Obviously, that's not the case. There are always instances in our society where we do follow and we do lead. Nobody is always just a leader, though in some instances there are some people who are always followers. There's also something else that women tend to struggle with when it comes to leading. One of the things I've noticed with women is they don't know how to make themselves heard. I'll give you an example. When they say no, they oftentimes try to be polite about it. I don't feel like it. No, I don't think that's the best. Women don't like to say no flat out. It makes them uncomfortable. But the problem is, if you have people who don't listen, they'll have to repeat themselves over and over, and they don't know how to make themselves heard without just getting louder and angry and frustrated and taking that out emotionally. For a guy, he could simply turn up the volume in a different way. He can say, no, I'm not interested. Thank you. And then if the person doesn't listen, he says, this is my final no, we're not doing it. And he can say it flat out like that, very confidently, assertively, without being rude, without it being emotional. Women, on the other hand, especially my own mother, she oftentimes, when confronted by salesmen, she's rude and mean and angry right off the bat. Because whenever she says no in other ways, people don't listen. She doesn't know how to make herself heard without being rude and showing that emotion. And that also applies when commanding people, when being assertive and telling people what to do. It's either very kind or it's very angry and emotionally fueled. Men have this problem much less. And I think it's both nature and nurture in this situation. If you have a person who's naturally born to be more of a leader and you train them well on how to be a leader, they're going to become exceptional leaders. But if you have an individual who's not only not born to be a leader and not trained on how to be a leader, things are naturally going to mess up. Now it's going to mess up much less, even if she's not naturally born to be a leader, but she's trained on it. Things will be better. There's more hope for it. But again, it's not going to compare. You're not going to do that well. In my opinion, it's better to just be born a natural leader, more naturally assertive, charismatic, more decisive, without the training. And that's my opinion on it. I know it's going to anger a lot of people, especially individuals who like to believe that we can simply be trained or raised a certain way and that decides everything, but it doesn't. Unfortunately, we don't live in that type of world. A lot of the time, people are just born differently. As sad and dogmatic as that sounds, it's what I believe. If you disagree with me, feel free to let me know what you think in the comments down below. And if you made it this far, you might as well subscribe. Check out some of my other videos. I think you will enjoy them. Alright friends, since you're in the video, do you have any words of wisdom you want to say to the 5 people who watched the video?
Do not make.
I cannot put that in the video. I'm going to have to mute it.
If you wish to teach your kid Texas, eat 30% of their food and ice cream.